Hello, everyone. Hope you are all having a wonderful day, evening, whatever time it is where you are. Welcome to our discussion for Module 9 for TEL 701. This week we are talking about descriptive and inferential statistics. So I'm here with Sandra and Kamara, and I'm going to kick us off and get us started with our first prompt, just to talk about the difference between descriptive statistics and inferential statistics, but talking to an 8-year-old. So first of all, just the basic definition of descriptive statistics. It is talking about the characteristics that you would describe something. And then inferential statistics would be making predictive guesses about something. But for an 8-year-old, I would go with Pokemon. So either Pokemon Go or Pokemon. Most 8-year-olds know Pokemon. So descriptive statistics for a Pokemon would be the characteristics of the Pokemon that would describe it. So Bulbasaur is green. It is a plant Pokemon. It has plant-based attacks. And if we were going to talk about inferential statistics, I think we would be talking about predicting which Pokemon are the most powerful based on their different types of attacks. So you have all sorts of fire Pokemon, you have all sorts of grass Pokemon, and you would predict with those different characteristics which one might be more powerful, or if you put fire against grass, what might happen. So that's probably how I would describe it. Since I'm not as caught up on the reading, I know y'all, Sandra and Kamara, might not be as familiar with Pokemon, but what do you think about that description, particularly the inferential one? I'm not sure if I got that one as well.
No, I think it's good. I was thinking about, for some reason, when I read this is, I don't know why, I just completely flashed back to my own childhood and like this big bag of marbles that I used to carry around. So it used to be this big thing on recess, to play marbles. And so I was thinking about descriptive statistics as being, you reach your hand in that marble bag and assuming there's like 4 different colors of marbles in there. And, we have this opportunity to count how many of each colored marble we got. And then, which colored marble did we get the most of? Did we get the most purple marbles or the most silver marbles? And, that sort of a thing. And then doing more inferential, or what I was thinking would be kind of a smart guess, would be we could either think about what colors do we think we would get if we did like 2 or 3 more handfuls of marbles, and do we think that one handful of marbles is representative of all of the marbles in the bag? And we could do some statistics to make some guesses to see how our little handful of marbles compares to all the other marbles that are still in the bag.
I love that.
Both excellent examples. So good that I don't need to add anything.
All right.
Well, we will just move on to the next one. So our next question is, are you planning to use any inferential statistical analysis for your dissertation, and why or why not? I would say at this point, I think because last week when we were talking about quantitative, qualitative, and I have kind of sort of jumped on the qualitative bandwagon, wanting to tell teacher stories. I have shied away from really thinking about quantitative, but just in the moment, thinking about how I want to implement this playful professional learning style with educators. I am not the only learning experience designer in my organization, and there is an opportunity for me to potentially compare groups of educators and cohorts that are receiving online professional learning. So it would be possible for me to, compare a cohort of educators that just received traditional online professional development with the educators that I was designing this playful professional development with. So I don't know that I'm planning to do that, but it is a possibility I think that I could do.
Yeah, I think that definitely descriptive. Just thinking about what I want to do with a class. I mean, we know that in this action research world, right, that whatever we do, it's not necessarily something that we can claim generalizability because it's so context specific. What's the other word we can't generalizability is one, but then what we can do is, I can't remember the word, but anyways, I do think I'm going to use a very simple one, which we haven't talked about yet, but I looked it up today because it's not the one that we read about this week. It's not the independent samples t-test. It might be the repeated measures t-test, because I'm looking at pre and post for the same group of people. And I'm not comparing that group to any other group. So, but I'm not really sure I know what I'm doing. Like that, it's so simple in my head, but I don't know the next step. So I got to wait till next week. But I would like to make some inferences. I think that's the point, but I just know that I'll be limited. And I don't know what, the implications are of sample size as well for something like this. So that's what I'm thinking. Kumar, and I think, Kumar, your sample size is bigger than what I'm expecting for mine. So
Well, I think maybe I definitely I was somewhat intrigued by this t-test, and part of this is that, just in full transparency, I'm not sure that I'm still 100% landed on exactly what I'm going to do for my method. And when I say that, I know that I'm going to do feminist relational leadership development. What I don't know is if I'm going to compare it to others who are going through leadership development that doesn't have that, in which case, maybe the t-test that we read about this week could be a really interesting thing to say,
yeah.
to sort of test them for how, how these groups exercise these techniques and see if there's a difference. I know in the past for my cycle 1, I did pre-post, Sandra, and I did like a Pearson's correlation for that, to look at that to see if I found statistical significance. So I know, again, descriptive statistics, yes. I know that I'm going to do some correlation. And so I do assume that I will have some type of t-test that I will do as well. I need to get a little bit more solid on what I'm going to compare, like if I'm going to have a control group. I think that's probably what I'm not confident in yet. It's not that I don't want to have one, it's the ability to make all of it happen in the time frame that we have.
Right. I think as we think about like life after our doctorate, and so many more questions and so many more research questions that we would be afforded to do because of time not being the constraint. I think time is such a huge constraint for us right now. And with time, it's also the accessibility of samples. Like, what can you put your hands on? So
I agree with
yeah.
the time thing too. And that came up in the qualitative assignment last week. I know this is our quantitative discussion, but it was the same thing in qualitative, reading through all of the different methodologies. And it was like, well, this would be nice to do, but given the time parameters that we have, or the time constraints, like it's not possible. I think back to that because of that should do it, like the can do ability, want to do ability, and should do ability. And time has been that factor there. Yeah, and I'm thinking back now when you mentioned the Pearson correlation, Kamara. I did a master's in education before this program, and I was actually looking at like project-based learning, and project-based learning was like more effective than traditional classroom instruction. And
Wow.
I was doing that at that point in time. I was doing a Pearson correlation. But in thinking about that, like I wasn't even really exposed to the qualitative, like narrative idea of telling student stories. Plus you can't really release that kind of thing about students anyway, I don't think. But I don't know. That just came to my mind as I was thinking about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our next question is about just giving more context on the independent samples t-test.
Yeah, it was just saying, are you planning to use one? And if you are, tell us about it. And if not, craft an example of how you would use this test in your school, work, or organization. And I think we've like kind of answered that some. Like I think I don't know that I could actually answer this right now about if I'm planning or like how to craft an example. So I think you have one in your mind. I think, Kamara, did you kind of share like yours, what it was going to be yet?
Well, maybe a little. I mean, I think if I had to craft an example of where I would use it kind of outside of the restrictions of time and ability and all those sorts of things, I would think about putting a group of individuals through a relational leadership development program, and then like doing an assessment on their ongoing implementation or adoption of those techniques and how they believe it's impacted their flourishing as leaders. And then I would take the other folks that are going through kind of the traditional leadership development program at MCW, and I would give them the same assessments and then do that t-test to see if there's a difference. I think that's how I would use it. And that's sort of the most relevant example that comes up for me.
Yeah, and I think, I'm sorry, Sandra, did you want to?
No, I was just going to say mine would be similar. Like if I said, like I would take 2 different courses and I would maybe teach, you would teach them differently. One would have like the change maker pedagogy and the other one wouldn't, right? And then you have some kind of measure at the end of the semester. So we're only testing them once. There's like no pre-post, and you're just comparing 2 different groups of students, and you want to know if the mean, if there's any difference in the mean in terms of whether there's a difference in the mean and whether it has anything to do with chance, or like what the probability is that it wasn't due to chance or something like that. So it's very similar to what Kamara was saying.
Yeah.
You know what comes up too, and I think I don't know, my head goes to really weird places, but I think I get we have to do these tests and these data and have control groups, but I think about ethics and I'm like, especially when you talk about change maker education, I'm like, well, everybody should have change maker education. Like that's sad for the kids that don't have it, but I mean, this is just science, this is how it works. But I feel like I read that somewhere along the way, and some of the things we did. And I guess when you get into like medical testing, that giving people placebos and trying to measure that, like that's a whole thing too. But yeah, I kind of said in my scenario, what I would do is I would compare the educators that are in the cohort where I am designing these professional development experiences that are playful in nature and have playful elements to them that I've like spelled out. And I'm specifically measuring, I call it engagement and motivation, but I'm using like self-determination theory. So like I don't have my survey crafted. I'm looking for like an official tool to see if there's an actual like instrument or that's related to self-determination theory. But self-determination theory measures like, or it talks about autonomy, competency, and connectedness. So these are like these 3 pillars of it. And so if I could get an instrument to like measure that, and the idea behind self-determination theory is that there is intrinsic motivation. So like I'm interested in intrinsic motivation in doing professional development, and curious if there is any sort of relationship between having a playful element in professional development versus just your straight regular like online modules or something. And we have those in our organization. So like my comparison could be looking at if I was able to give that survey. And that's the other thing is like the permissions that I need to work with educators that are not like that are part of all these other different groups. It's sort of difficult for me because I have my project that I'm assigned to, and I am not going to split like one of my cohorts, like my cohort of 10 or 20 educators. We're all meeting at the same time and they're all going to get the same professional development.
Right.
And so I don't know how I would have to look at another learning designer that chose to do just like traditional online to compare it. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Awesome. Well, I think all of our questions for this week, unless anybody has anything else.
I don't think so.
All right. Well, we hope you all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.